welcome to the Caspian Podcast, the podcast of the Caspian Post, with me, Mark Elliott. Hello and welcome to the Caspian Podcast with me, Mark Elliott. Today I'm with Knut-Erlend Rosvold, I hope I've said that right, who is the founder and director of Provitas. Now, it may not be the first, but I think it's one of the best known of the providers of solar energy and small-scale renewable energy in Azerbaijan. Have I kind of got that right, Knut, or is that already wrong?
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah. Yeah.
And what's remarkable is you're a Norwegian citizen, but also a permanent resident of Azerbaijan. And I believe that you've lived there on and off, at least, for 10 years with a house in Lankaran and not in Baku, which is a little bit unusual.
Yeah. It is. That's true. Yes. I still have my house there in Lankaran, and we worked out of Baku the last years there. So can you just tell the people a little bit about Provitas, what inspired it, and what it is exactly that you do with the company? Well, the title of the company, Provitas, it's like Provitas. It's for life in Azerbaijan. Is the idea behind the name, and it's for life to flourish and life to grow and life to expand in Azerbaijan for everyone. And then we have this tag under Müstegil Ol, which basically means be independent. And we've struggled with that. Sometimes people interpret it in the wrong way, but for me, it's like for Azerbaijan to be independent on energy, independent from other powers around them, to be a strong country with independent source of energy. And as we know, solar energy is abundant in Azerbaijan. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually read that they only currently have about 40 megawatts capacity, whereas there's an estimated 23 gigawatts of potential. Now, as I understand it, when you started off, we're actually doing yourself the electric works to create some of the first of the solar panels that you sold there. This is something like 2013.
We started with it's true. Yeah, we started with the solar heating panels that we produced in Lankaran, and we set up a factory. And it was exciting times, and it was a joint effort with a local entrepreneur, and it was fun and exciting. But unfortunately, when the devaluation of the valuta, we had some increased costs that made that product not so competitive compared to the gas, and at the same time so the main end product was heat, right? Hot water. So at the same time, you had these boilers coming into the country, fantastic gas boilers everywhere, and it kind of changed the market situation. And we at the same time, the solar electric panels were really coming down in price. And at some point, we decided that we would really look more into that solar electric, which is also my background as electronics. So kind of messing around with all that water wasn't my thing, actually. So I was glad for that transition, and that actually it became our way to stabilize the company, which has been around since 2013 now. So it's starting to be more or less stable, yeah.
And so you're mainly targeting individual households, is that right? People, is it rural? Is it city? Or is it a mixture?
It's amazing. The diversity of the project that we are doing is one of the biggest joys. Like in other countries, maybe solar is a little bit of a kind of the same thing over and over again. But in Azerbaijan, there's all these applications because people have different needs for energy in different situations. And we do like solar pumping, where we pump water directly with these panels. It's fantastic, very effective way. And for you can imagine so many places that you need to have water for agricultural activities. So this is one demand. And then we have, the off-grid system for farmers, and the joy of, being able to make farming possible. It has been like a thing for us because we see the spin-off of that, when someone gets to start their farm and they create work for many people. Every farm will need a labor, So because it's labor intensive, and we see that, you know, this making energy available everywhere is really a big thing for you know, small business development. And then there are residential houses, some larger and smaller types of installations with on-grid, off-grid system, with batteries, without batteries, just, you know. So the variety of the project is just amazing.
Well, it does sound. Now, I know that since the war at the end of 2020, the president has been talking a lot about having smart villages in the deoccupied areas. I would imagine that is a very exciting prospect in the sense that, as you say, part of the rebuilding, we can't just rebuild as things were. I mean, and I would imagine that renewable energy will have a massive part to play in that.
Yeah, you know, when I do calculate also some systems in Norway, and I look at the amount of sun in Azerbaijan compared to Norway, you know, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy, you know. So, you know, a north-facing panel in Azerbaijan would probably, you know, produce more power than a south-facing one in Norway. You know, the amount of sun is really, you know, it's 280 days of sunlight, and, you know, it goes without saying that solar energy should definitely be a part of the reconstruction of and the rebuilding of these areas. I'm sure that's the intentions.
But obviously, so, the price point becomes very important, doesn't it, for a lot of these poor farmers that, you know, they've been IDPs and then they're going back. So, I mean, has solar really reached a point where it's realistic to provide them for just single families of, you know, from really relatively poor backgrounds?
I would say that incentives are needed to some degree if you want to have like a huge deployment, because we feel that, you know, just the private homes or dwellings and having solar there, for most of the time, it's people that see that if I invest in this, I can create some revenue for me, then that will open a business. So most of the time there's some incentive, or there's someone that actually thinks that, you know, in the long run. But, you know, problem with solar is that high capital investment in the beginning, and, you know, it will take some years before that money returns. And the way people live in Azerbaijan, that doesn't really add up. So, you know, it could be like special grants programs or such that would really release it, and then people would be able to pay it gradually. So, I mean, this is, you know, the high expense for getting capital in Azerbaijan is the main challenge for the solar panels. They last for 30 years, you know. So it's like, you know, it's a no-brainer when you look at the levelized cost of energy over the lifetime. But the problem is the initial cost.
So maybe it needs to be sort of somehow going in hand with a microcredit system of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. And I am sure this is something that could be solved easily. Yeah.
Well, one of the lovely stories that you let me know about was that some of the tiny villages in the Hirkan National Park, which for people that don't know it, if you listen to our previous podcast with Tom Marsden, we talked a little bit about those places. But these are, I think there's 5 villages which don't appear on any maps, and they became a little bit famous because Baba Khan, the so-called leopard man of Azerbaijan, his family lives in Siop, I think it's known as, in one of those places. But there are no roads, and I know when I stayed there, I think it was about 3 years ago, in the most marvelous bit of hiking. There was basically no light, no electricity, unless they cranked up a great big generator. Now, from what I gather, your company has somehow managed to put solar into those places. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, this was, a guy from the villages there. He approached me and he said, you know about these villages that, you know, we don't have any electricity. I didn't know such a place exists, because infrastructure in Azerbaijan is really amazing when you think about it. Compared to so many other places in the world that you would compare to, Azerbaijan has a lot of good electric infrastructure and such. And I think there are reasons for why these villages ended like this. There's a history there, but I didn't believe it. So I just, okay, I'll hike there and see, because it's not far. So, he invited me and I went there. And, as you get spoiled by the hospitality, and these people are so amazingly friendly. And, the Polish cooking, that's something different, with all these nutty flavors and stuff. Oh, my goodness. So, they sold me on their hospitality. Like, I was like, I had this moment where I thought about, if I'm not fixing this, who else is going to do it, really? I know this thing. This is my field, and we can solve it. It's solvable. The basic thing, just get a few solar panels, a nice battery. Like, we got lithium batteries for them, actually, so that it will last for 10 years. So, so we decided that we're going to do a GoFundMe and do this as a project. And, we had lots of Azeri people giving towards this, which was really encouraging for me.
So this is a crowdfunding thing.
Crowdfunding thing, yeah. And we had people from, I don't know, all over the world supporting this. It was really fun to see. So we're like 50 different givers towards this project, which is pretty good, I think. When I don't know, it's not such culture maybe for this kind of thing in Azerbaijan, and I was really amazed by that. But then finally we had a big giver that said, whatever is left, I'm gonna pay, and then we had it. So fantastic. It's fantastic. So then we were able to give these. It was 20 systems about in the forest there. And we decided to go individually because of different reasons. That was the most practical thing to do. And there was a small fee they had to pay, was really low. So there was some kind of skin in the game for the locals there.
Yes.
So it was more like a charity project of mine.
Well, I can imagine. I can imagine just to get there with the solar panels would be no easy matter, because is there any way to get there other than by horse and walking? I don't think there is.
No, definitely not. There's not. So they loaded these panels and they did a whole lot of work themselves. So that was part of the deal, I was not gonna carry anything. So all these batteries, all these panels, they hold them we brought them to a site near the forest, and they haul them on donkeys. So, it's like solar panels loaded on donkeys through the forest. The whole distribution, they did themselves, so that was also part of the deal. Yeah.
Well, that does sound absolutely magical.
Yeah. And our guys, they had the work installing it. And, that was our company's contribution. So, I had a guy doing the work, went from village to village and did the installment of these panels, and so exciting.
Now let's just back up a tiny little bit, because for people that you mentioned Talish cooking and Talish hospitality, I think some of the viewers might not know that the Talish area is essentially the sort of southeastern corner of Azerbaijan, sort of overlapping with the Iranian border, and again, I think for those that haven't been there, people, when they imagine Iran, for example, tend to think of deserts. But this corner of Iran and the Talish region of Azerbaijan are extremely lush, very, very green. You have sort of, I think there's even rice paddies on the Iranian side.
Yes, definitely.
But certainly on the Azerbaijani side, you've got citrus groves and tea plantations. And then it rises up into these mountains. And the villages we're talking about are in a thick forest, which are sort of, in places, they're so thick with mosses and epiphytes that it's like walking into a jungle, isn't it?
But, it's a national park for good reason. There are tons of endemic species, and it's a hidden corner of the world. I think if we're somewhere else, people would come far from to just wander around in there. It's just fantastic. The nature is so, how to say, pristine, or like it just feels so. You feel healthy when you're there. It's like breathing that air.
There's a certain magic, isn't there? There's a sound of the way that you can hear the streams and the rivers flowing in the valleys below you, and you can't quite hear where they are, but you know they're there, and it sort of soothes you in a remarkable way. I certainly found the place completely magical. Now, since I went up further up in the Hirkan National Park, when I mean, I did visit you back, I think in 2015, and you had been talking about doing some possibly cycle or mountain bike ecotourism. I guess that never worked out.
At that time, my business was kind of in between, and I was not quite sure what way it would take, eventually. And I was like, I could do something completely different. Entrepreneurial mind, is always looking at these opportunities, and I was like, maybe I just import some real mountain bikes and try to set up like this tourism business. And, I was kind of looking at that. And, I'm kind of still looking at that sometimes, it's like these, trails through the forest are absolutely amazing for hiking. And I hope that tourism will develop, and like biking tours would be perfect. And, I know a guy there that.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, he does horseback a little bit, and horseback riding is also an amazing way to explore.
Would you want to give his name a shout out in case people want to find him?
Oh yeah. Well, he's a American guy living there, so it's Terry Bronte. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'm sure if you go to Lankaran, you ask for the American, they'll show. Show you the way.
And that brings me to my last.
It's not a business of his, but he is. I think he's thinking about it. But in general, it's just amazing way that go by horseback riding is also amazing way to explore these, and locals can arrange it. But the saddles and such is sometimes the issue. To get that kind of riding that Westerners expect,
Well, I certainly know that when I've been on the back of a horse, both in either side of the Caspian Sea, it's usually been a few carpets thrown over the back of the horse. And off you go.
Exactly. Yes. So it can be quite. I'm not much of a rider myself, but I think a saddle would definitely help. So yeah.
Well, you often get a stirrup or two, so we can't complain. Now, and then just to finish it off, as you say, an American in Lankaran does stand out, because Lankaran itself isn't a particularly well-known place amongst foreigners, and so I'm sort of interested that you have lived on and off there for nearly a decade. Just to finish us off, then, could you give us some sense of maybe why you stayed in Lankaran, or what you liked about Lankaran, and why anyone should think about possibly going to live there and be the second foreigner in Lankaran?
Yeah, there are some, but there are very few foreigners there. Part of it was part of me was nature that drew me to that location, and there were at that time another American guy living there that I got to know, and he was sort of he invited me down there, and it was really like the whole feeling of the place, and the citrus and the nature, the lush nature, the sea there, the mountains close by. I'm from Norway. I love the mountains, of course. So, mountains are always something that attracts me. So I don't know. I think it was the whole package. And it's like, it's just different. The people down there are so hospitable and open, and they want to get to know you, and they want to, they're not reserved. So they're really, extrovert, social, and they just embrace you. And I never had a bad experience there, It's like, I don't know. I can go on bragging about the Lankaran for, hours. There are so many good things about that place. Well, and I think it should become some major tourist attraction at some point, because it has everything that you'd ask for, right?
Well, I have to say, I love the area, and I completely side with you. I first went down there.
And the hot springs. Yeah. We need to mention that. It's amazing hot
and
spring.
actually, one of the hot springs has recently been done up into a very snazzy resort. But if you go further into the mountains, there's the old one, which is still beautifully run down and sweet. So you've got a bit of everything. Anyway, well, I think with that, we've hopefully encouraged a lot of people to discover the Talish region. Thank you so much for telling us about the hope that we have for renewable energy in Azerbaijan, and in a more global sense.
Yes.
I do think, I mean, I noticed the government just last month has talked about a great improvement in their focus on renewable energies. And that's something I hope we'll be able to cover in greater detail on the Caspian Post website. So look for that a little bit later on. Thank you very much, Knut. You've been listening to the Caspian podcast with me, Mark Elliott, and with Knut-Erlend Rosvold. Thank you very much, Knut.
Okay.